Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'm going to be doing a little bit of an update for my Rat Paladin DPS guide for 8.1. It's not going to be very long or very big because there's not a lot of changes that happened. So if you are completely lost and you just stumbled upon this video, I will put a link in the information to direct you to the previous video, which will tell you things like priority of moves and just generally how the paladins work, generally what stats are good and stuff like that. And of course, I will tell you to simulate your character. That's what I will always tell everybody because that's what's going to help you the most. So, other than that, let's go ahead and get started. I use a website to get my information from that kind of aggregates the data, and I'll put that in the information as well. It's also in the previous video. So the biggest changes is what I'll just talk about is just to azerite. So they added a couple new things for us here. They added more than a couple, but Light's Decree and Imperium Power are the big two. Light's Decree is just really strong in general. So Light's Decree, um, it's it does a ton of damage, especially just for single target, just having one of them. It does not stack super well, so you don't have to really worry about like stacking it at all. So you just want one Light's Decree, basically. So you don't need like three Light's Decree or anything like that. Just get one Light's Decree in your gear as of now, and you'll be good. If you could also get an Imperium Power, that's pretty good too. That's the other one. That one's actually even a little bit better for AoE for one stack of it is at least. So having both of those is really good in most situations. Most of the top parses will have one of each, and then either Laser Matrix or Archive of the Titans. And as far as older stuff goes, because you need to have that, the buff in there, the older buff. But if you could do a Light's Decree, Imperium Power, and then one of those for older, that's great. For the new raid, obviously, if there's a new buff for the new raid, then you would want to use that. It's not out yet, so I can't tell you if there is or not, and I don't play on the PTR or anything. So, yeah, Light's Decree, Imperium Power, definitely get those. If you have raid gear already, you can look at it and reforge it, and you might see that it's on there. Or before you reforge it, you can look and see that it's probably on there. Like either one of the two, Light's Decree or Imperium Power. So those are both really strong. Those are the biggest changes. That they gave us some good azerite changes, which is good. I'm definitely happy about it because our azerite stuff kind of sucked overall. And they're kind of interesting too, and they're a little bit more class fantasy, which was their goal, and so I guess they hit the mark there. As far as anything else goes, I guess I'll talk a little bit about talents in this guide. It's not really a guide in this update. Just a couple things that I've noticed myself. If you're in a straight AoE situation, a really good combination to use is Zeal, Fires of Justice, and Divine Purpose. So obviously, if you're only AoEing, Righteous Verdict's completely worthless, and so is Execution Sentence. So obviously, you would choose Zeal there. However, it becomes a little bit more ambiguous on the next tier because all those talents are really similar. But I've noticed Fires of Justice works really well with Divine Purpose in general. They kind of synergize well together. So especially in AOE situations, for whatever reason, it's just nice to get those extra Divine Storms off and really pump the damage. But they also did bump or buff our Divine Storm as well. Other than that, everything in the previous video is pretty much exactly the same. I said in the previous video, Divine Purpose Inquisition are very similar. I think at the time I might have said Divine Purpose was slightly stronger, which it was. If I did, Inquisition was going to slowly overtake it, which it did. But however, Divine Purpose is still one of those things that's still close enough. It's RNG based. You might have you'll have the chance to get the highest parse with Divine Purpose, but you could also really dip down if you don't get the procs. So if you get low amount of procs, so you're on the low end of the proc line, or if all your procs come that you do get, not during your Avenging Wrath, that could cause you trouble as well. I do see people somewhat succeeding with Crusade. That would depend on, if you could pop it during a very high intense fight and get to use the entire thing. That would be the time to use Crusade, you don't have to move at all or anything like that. That'd be a good time to use Crusade. And if you can do that, then it still is a decent talent. But the best thing about it is the second row and the last row are somewhat competitive. And honestly, Consecration and Wake of Ashes are somewhat competitive, but except for Consecration, you literally have to stand still. So Wake of Ashes still definitely, for me, is the cooler talent and the way to go there. Other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. Brett's still kind of really weak right now, unfortunately. I know I have mostly epic parses, except for on the final bosses because we barely kill the final bosses, or I'm dead, or whatever else. Um, and So I have mostly epic parses, but what I notice is that my epic parse is like the same as a lot of other classes' green parse. So just at random numbers, if I did 10,000 DPS and that was an 80 parse, and a mage did 10,000 DPS, that might be like a 45 parse for them. That's just kind of gives you an idea that we're still a pretty weak class. They haven't addressed that yet. Maybe we're going to get stronger as the expansion goes on. I know that was kind of the case in Legion, especially once Nighthold hit. We saw a huge spike in our damage, so maybe that'll happen. We'll find out. I'm not holding my breath on it. I'm not enjoying it a ton. Having to work really hard. You really have to min max your gear as Ret, every item, which is hard to do, especially if you're somewhat casual. Like me, I'm somewhat hardcore but somewhat casual, and it's hard to min max every little piece of gear for me. And you really kind of need to do that to really get the most out of your class right now. Otherwise, you're almost worthless in a lot of instances. You're still pretty good for Mythic Pluses, which is good because you can do good AOE, and you have a little bit of usefulness with bops and bubbles and taunting, and some off heals and things like that, lay on hands, everything like that. So you do have some use for Mythic Pluses, but rating, it's hard to justify bringing a Ret Paladin. So I'm definitely thankful that I am able to still raid with my guild, even though my class kind of sucks. So yeah, not a ton to update really. Video was probably longer than what I liked. However, if you learned anything from this video, or if you go back and watch my other video, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate it. And other than that, everybody have a good one.